Peter Hansels again with Peter Wang, and we're going to continue now on the big story on the continuing saga of the coronavirus that was discovered about more than 6 weeks ago in China. There's the thinking now that this virus had its origins in the warm meat markets, the wildlife markets of certain parts of Wuhan, which is a major city in central China of approximately 11 million people. What I want to focus on right now is an article that I read in a newspaper about the directives that were coming from Beijing directly to the officials, the health officials in Wuhan, as to exactly how this virus and the subsequent outbreak is to be tackled. And I think Peter can interject here when I say that the directive from Beijing was predicated on 3 words. The most important priority was going to be politics. The second priority was going to be safety. And the final priority was going to be science. And from science, I'm assuming that that means medicine and the medical point of view on this topic. Now, Peter, in your experience, having been born and raised in mainland China, do you see this as anything out of the ordinary in the way the upper echelons of the PRC government conducts itself when it's faced with something that has come out of the blue and hasn't been properly managed?
I see nothing extraordinary in this case. On the contrary, I can draw a conclusion from the history. There is consistency in the Chinese government practice or the way they govern this country. First of all, the rule of thumb is political stability, that they grasp, i.e. they grasp their power firm and tight, even though at a huge cost of a human life. In this case, is the outbreak of coronavirus. Every day it kills like dozens of people now. Even though a lot of people in Crimea still doubt this figure, it's not true. Underplayed or underestimated. Some people say it could be multiplied by 5. Maximum could be multiplied by 10. It doesn't matter whether multiplied by 5 or 10, or even with the figure that Chinese local authority hand over to us, it's still a tragedy. The Chinese government, they won't openly acknowledge that they remote control those provincial government, or even those like Wuhan, a city of 11 million people, the municipal government to control everything. On the contrary, as President Xi Jinping told the chief executive of World Health Organization, the meeting held 3 days ago, President Xi said he himself control everything. Every order of this campaign to tackle the virus is under his guidance, personally.
So he's driving.
Emphasized. Yeah.
So he's driving the narrative exclusively.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course. It is in line with the policy he adopted ever since he came into power 7 years ago, that the party controls everything. Or in other words, in Chinese equivalent is everything should look on his shoulder, not anyone else, even in the Politburo or the Standing Committee of the Politburo, the elite group of Communist Party of China. So this time, as we heard people talking about who will hold accountable for this spread or the cover-up, I think everybody will look into Beijing. And apparently, under the current Chinese system, and particularly after President Xi Jinping emphasized and re-emphasized numerously in the past 7 years, it is him, not anyone else, should take the final responsibility of this whole event.
So correct me if I'm wrong, but if this doesn't go well, he will take the fall. You don't know what I mean by that. If this does not go well, he will take the fall.
Of course, I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, as we've seen in the history like this, almost 60 years ago, the so-called Great Leap movement in China ends up like lost over 30 million people, died of starvation. Mao Zedong, the previous Chinese leader, should be responsible for this. But it doesn't mean he will step down. That's the system deficiency of the communist regime.
So they're seeing whatever pain is, in their eyes, they see it as collateral damage.
Of course, yeah.
It's the price to pay.
And they found several other scapegoat to bear the responsibility.
Yeah.
At the time, even see the Soviet Union, they give us pressure to pay back the debts, and also it attributes to some natural disaster.
Yeah.
While they cover up all their policy deficiency.
Yeah.
Chairman Mao never admit like it is only because of his policy which leads to the starvation and end up killing 30 million people. The same case like in Wuhan, this coronavirus, I don't think President Xi Jinping will admit himself by saying it's my fault.
Somebody else will take the fall.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a good point, because so you're in essence, we're saying that totalitarian states are ill-equipped in proper risk assessment and a proper public relations narrative.
Yes.
There are
true.
deficiencies.
Yeah. Ironically, before the communist government came into power in 1949, in 1943, Mao Zedong, the later Chinese leader, he criticized, by then, 1943, the Second World War, the anti-Japanese war. He said, Mr. Chiang Kai-shek is a totalitarian leader. And he said, it is only because of this leads to all the disaster in China. Then, today, the current situation, what happened in Wuhan, perfect example, shows how correct Mao Zedong said at that time. But not today is not in the Chiang Kai-shek's time. It's the communist society which ruled the Wuhan.
So what you're telling me, if we can sum up on this topic, is that I think the Chinese leadership is fully conscious of the weaknesses of their system, but they're afraid to admit it, or they're oblivious to the obvious, and they're willing to play things out as long as they can justify responsibility on people who are down the chain of command. Would you not agree?
I agree with your comment. They of course know the deficiency of their system, but in order to take advantage of controlling the power themselves, not sharing with the other social group, they're willing to pay the cost, but because the cost is on the public shoulders, not on their own.
Yeah, the ultimate cost.
Yeah.
The ultimate cost.
Yeah.
So are they, in essence, inflicting pain on themselves and not taking responsibility?
I don't think without a change of political system, they will put those responsibilities on their shoulders.
I think that's the response I was looking for.
Yeah.
You know, it's so obvious. And I think we can end on that note, because this is more than food for thought. This is a real test of the governance in the People's Republic of China. Thanks, Peter.